Hello everyone, and welcome to our video on DOLS, a quick guide to the ADDAS Form 1. Once you've decided that you are depriving a patient of their liberty, before filling out a DOLS Form 1, we're going to speak with the family and carers and record their views. We also need to ensure that we inform and discuss with the lead consultant. Only once they agree and they have completed an assessment of capacity regarding the need to remain in hospital for care and treatment, and documented this conversation on Care Notes using the relevant Care Notes form under the Assessments tab. We can then go ahead and locate a Deprivation of Liberty Safeguards Form 1. It looks like this form here. Let's begin filling out the form. First, we are going to start with the case ID number, also known as the CIS number. This will help ensure that the correct individual is identified for this request. Next, we can see there are two boxes here, Request for Standard Authorization and Grant an Urgent Authorization. As we all know, we would not be filling out this form unless we were requesting a standard authorization, so this box should always be ticked. But as the managing authority, we also have the ability to grant ourselves an urgent authorization for 7 days starting immediately. If this is something that you're going to be granting, you will also need to tick this box here. Now, we are going to fill out the information of the particular person that we are requesting this authorization for. We are going to make sure that when we are filling it out, we use their full name, usually the name that is depicted on Care Notes. We will also be identifying which sex they are, whether that be female, male, other, or possibly unknown. Now we can go ahead and fill out their date of birth and their estimated age. These should also be on Care Notes. Now we are going to provide information of any medical history that is relevant to the request. We should always consider the word relevant here as key. Moving on to sensory and communication requirements. This is one of the parts of the form that is extremely important to ensure is complete, and if there are no sensory or communication requirements, it is necessary to specify that there is in fact none of these issues rather than leaving it blank, as this will inform us this part wasn't just missed. Moving on, we're going to type the full name and address of the hospital or care home that we are currently requesting this authorization for. Please ensure you are writing it out that if you were to send a letter to this address, it would be sufficient. Now you'll specify the best telephone number to be reached at. Usually this is the ward's contact number, but if you have more than one contact number or extension here, that is okay. You'll also state your name as the person who's completing this form and the best number to contact you on. This could also be the ward's number. You will also complete your email address or the best email address that the local authority could contact if any further information is needed from you. Please do ensure that this is a monitored inbox. You will also mention the ward that this is relevant to and any contact information for the ward if not already stated above. Moving on to the next part of the form, we are going to identify where the client is. As per our trust, we will usually put psychiatric ward, but this could be different depending on who is filling out the form and where they are located. We are also going to state the address of the individual we are completing this form for. This part is important as a local authority will depend on where the individual usually resides. This address will most likely be the one stated on Care Notes unless you know of a more recent address that has not been listed yet. You will also need to mention their telephone number if they have one, which is usually also listed on Care Notes. Now, you will need to identify the supervisory body that this form will be sent to by the DOLS admin team. Again, this should be based on where the individual usually resides and not where the location of the ward or care home is that they are currently on. Looking at how care is funded, as we are an NHS trust, this is usually going to be funded directly by the NHS. If it is funded by the NHS or not, please ensure you put an X next to the relevant box. For residents at Lindridge, it is important to check how the care package is being funded and then identify the relevant box above. Moving on to completing the actual request for standard authorization. Here you can see that you are to identify the date from which the standard authorization is required. If you are applying for a standard only, this date needs to be written within the next 28 days. If you are also granting an urgent authorization, you will most likely identify a day within the next 7 days, but if in doubt, just put the day you are completing this form. Now we can start filling out our actual purpose of the standard authorization and why we are applying for it. Here are a few examples of what you might put in this box. It will obviously depend on the patient's individual circumstances, but please do feel free to pause and read through these now. You will also need to identify how this person is or will be deprived of their liberty. This includes why they will not be free to leave and why they are under continuous supervision and control. You will also describe the proposed restrictions or the restrictions that are currently in place that ensure the person receives proper care and treatment, and you will want to mention the frequency of the restrictions that have been put in place. Now we will need to consider and identify anyone who might be interested in this person or would most likely need to be consulted with regards to this application. The most common one is that of a family member or a friend. The relevant person that you are completing this form for might identify this person, or this might be someone who is already regularly involved and interested in their care and treatment. There are a few other sections for other people that are either directly named by the patient or again, someone engaged in their care. It is also important to identify anyone that might have a legal decision-making power with regards to this patient or anyone who actively advocates for them. Does this patient have a lasting power of attorney for either health and welfare or finances? Do they have a court-appointed deputy to mention? Do they have an instructed IMCA? And if so, is there a report available that could be included? If not, the IMCA's information should be sufficient. Following on from the last bit of information regarding an IMCA, you can now identify if there isn't one, but you feel that one needs to be instructed. Or, is there someone who is appropriate to consult about what is in the person's best interest, who is neither a professional nor is being paid to provide care and treatment? If so, please make sure you have recorded them above. Now we will identify if there is an applicable advance decision. Please ensure you only tick one of these options. Lastly, on this part, we're going to state if the person is subject to some element of the Mental Health Act. As we all know, a patient cannot be subject to DOLS and the Mental Health Act at the same time. So if they are subject to the Mental Health Act at the time of completing this form, please provide details on this. Moving on to adding any other relevant information that you might feel is worth mentioning, such as any regular visitors not detailed elsewhere in this form, and any relevant safeguarding issues. Once you have completed everything above, you will need to sign and print your name, as well as specify the date and time that you did so. It is also necessary to confirm you have informed any of the interested persons of this request by signing here. If you do not have an interested persons listed, it's appropriate to leave this blank. Now we are going to identify the racial, ethnic, or national origin of this patient using one box only. We will also identify the patient's sexual orientation using one box only. Now we are on to the part of the form that identifies any other disabilities that the patient might have. While this person must have a mental disorder as defined under the Mental Health Act 1983, there may be another disability that is primarily associated with this person. You will identify this by placing a cross in one box only. Moving on to another very important part of the other disabilities information. All questions listed under this additional disabilities part of the form are required for the CQC. Once there has been an outcome to this application, the DOLS team will be sending this, as well as other relevant information, directly to the CQC. As you can see, each question has a correlating yes and no box. You simply click the box you would like to select for each question. Please ensure you have answered all the questions here before submitting the form. Following on, you will also identify the relevant person's religion or belief. We are now on to the part of the form where we are granting ourselves an urgent authorization. As you can see, this part reads, Only complete this section if you need to grant an urgent authorization because it appears to you that the deprivation of liberty is already occurring or about to occur, and you reasonably think all of the following conditions are met. Place a cross in each box to confirm that the person appears to meet the particular condition. Take care in ensuring that you have gone through and ticked each appropriate box. Once you have gone ahead and made sure that all boxes above have been ticked, an urgent authorization is now granted. It is to be in force for a period of 7 days. When calculating the day that the 7 days expires on, it's best to look at a calendar and look down one and over to the left, and this will give you your 7 days. You will then specify on the same part of the form the date the urgent authorization will expire at the end of the day on. As well, you will need to sign, print your name, date, and put the time that you filled this out. As well as granting yourself an urgent authorization for 7 days, you can also request an extension of that for a further 7 days from the local authority. This will allow 14 days of urgent authorization and can be requested at the same time as the urgent or any day before the urgent's expiry. You will specify that you are requesting an extension of 7 days and will also need to provide information as to why you are requesting this. Give detail as to why you consider the patient's restrictive care and treatment arrangements are likely to remain the same when the original urgent authorization expires in 7 days' time. You will finish this part off by signing it and dating it. The very bottom of the form is the local authority's response to your urgent authorization extension request. It is not to be filled out by you, but will be filled out and returned by the local authority with a new expiry date if granted. What now? Once saved, simply attach your completed DOLS Form 1 to an email and send to dols@spft.nhs.uk. Once we have received the form into our DOLS admin inbox, we will review it to ensure that all parts are filled out correctly, and we will send it to the relevant local authority as a new DOLS referral. You have now correctly filled out and submitted a DOLS Form 1. Please contact dols@spft.nhs.uk if you have any questions or need further information. Thank you for your time.